We know practically everything about Mother Teresa of Calcutta, or maybe almost everything. Her childhood in Skopje, Macedonia, then joining the religious order, her novitiate, her experience in Ireland, and her very long, almost eternal experience in India, a land that had fascinated her since she was a young girl, since she read the letters from missionaries who at the beginning of the 20th century had been sent to the Indian subcontinent to evangelize the population. About Mother Teresa of Calcutta, as we have said, we know almost everything. We know about her suffering. We know about her closeness to the most destitute, to the sick and the needy. We also know that the Catholic Church, through a very rapid procedure, canonized her and made her a saint. In short, a figure who should absolutely be regarded in a positive light. Let's also include the Nobel Peace Prize that was awarded to her. But an old proverb says that not everything that glitters is gold. And even in the case of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, we find a few things. Some stains, some doubts, some insinuations that would deserve to be looked into. Some details and particulars don't add up in the overall reconstruction during both beatification and canonization. Something that clashes not only with Christian and Catholic morals, but also with what we all experience as morality, regardless of religious belief. Those precepts that should be universal and that basically guide human beings, or should guide them throughout their existence. As they say, not everything that glitters is gold. And the first one to think so is a journalist. His name is Christopher Hitchens. In 1995, when Mother Teresa is still alive, even though she is suffering from malaria, he writes a book with a provocative title. In Italian, it's called The Missionary Position. Yes, I know some of you may find the title blasphemous, but it's not mine and I can't change it. That's how it is. This book causes scandal, but not just because of that provocative title. As much for the investigations carried out by Hitchens regarding the activities of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. What does Hitchens write in his book? That the future saint gave it. Poverty, illness, and suffering as gifts from heaven. She told the less fortunate, the sick, the poor, the needy with joy that these were gifts that came from God. Now, if Christian and Catholic morality has taught anything, it's that yes, at least according to them, there is a divine judgment. Some interpretations mention a predestination more deeply explored by other Christian doctrines, like Lutheranism and Calvinism, but Catholic morality does not teach to passively accept everything that comes, without giving a message, without showing God whether we are worthy or unworthy of what comes as a gift. Just read the Holy Scriptures, like Job, for example. But let's get back to us. Let's leave aside for a moment what is ecclesiastical doctrine. Hitchens, in his book, justifies this statement. The praise that Mother Teresa gave to pain and poverty with observations made on site. Let's take Calcutta, the great Indian metropolis that eventually gave its name to the future saint. In Calcutta, Mother Teresa had set up a clinic, which later became a small hospital, a small clinic dedicated to the least of the least among the least. Certainly a commendable act, certainly an act that earned her well-deserved praise from the international community. But what exactly is that clinic, Hitchens? Let me tell you about it. The famous clinic in Calcutta is actually not a hospital. Inside, they only offer shelter, not treatment. I don't feel well either. A place where poor people go to die. Instead of dying on the streets in misery and filth, they go there to die, within 4 crumbling walls. Mother Teresa's clinic, though it's not truly a clinic, is it? Because the medical care is minimal, primitive, and with scarce resources, with staff who are not trained and not qualified to provide care. The vast majority are religious people who have no medical experience and don't even have a university education. This is what Christopher Hitchens denounces in his book. He denounces the fact that behind the image of Mother Teresa, of her closeness to the poorest, there is another reality. There is no intention to improve the living conditions of these unfortunate people, but simply to exalt their suffering, their martyrdom, and extremization, to bring human suffering before the eyes of the world, but without doing anything to improve it. Hitchens, in his book, is not alone because, in addition to gathering testimonies on site, he is also supported by several international medical associations. 2 British journals, The Lancet and the British Medical Journal, during the same period, reported the poor living conditions of the patients. The fact that in the famous clinic, which is not really a clinic, beyond the cots and a few medicine cabinets, there is absolutely no trace of hospital equipment. The British Medical Journal reports the absence of department heads and real doctors. In that place, they only provide shelter and palliative care. Sometimes some over-the-counter drugs are given, the kind anyone can get at a pharmacy without a prescription. So it's not a hospital, it's not a clinic. So how can we define it? A deception, a distortion of reality? And why did Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who seemed so close to the poorest, not want to treat them, but wanted them to suffer even more, as if it were an exaltation of some supposed divine will? Maybe that's why we have to go way back to 1946. India has just become independent. With it, Pakistan also becomes independent, breaking away, because one of the 2 entities has a Hindu majority and the other has a Muslim majority, and religious clashes become more and more intense. Calcutta is shaken by turmoil for several weeks, a continuous turmoil, with killings happening everywhere. People talk about the Great Calcutta Killing, the great murders of Calcutta. Mother Teresa stays locked in her convent for a long time. She only goes out rarely to look for food. After a few weeks, when the turmoil begins to subside, thanks also to the intervention of Mahatma Gandhi, then the nuns, like Mother Teresa, go out, and Mother Teresa herself goes to Darjeeling for a spiritual retreat. And during this journey, Mother Teresa will claim to have had a mystical illumination, a revelation. In this revelation, Mother Teresa would have understood that the true divine message would be suffering, to suffer even more. She who had already taken her vows, she who was already doing missionary work. From that moment on, she dedicated her life to poverty, illness, insecurity, tragedy, and suffering. She took care of the destitute, the homeless, the sick, and the lepers. This is how we know Mother Teresa. This is how the West knows Mother Teresa of Calcutta. From that moment on, she would become a public media figure, with photos showing her together with the world's powerful people. From then on, Mother Teresa of Calcutta's life changed. But from that moment on, questions also began to arise. One concerns, as we said, the non-clinic clinic in Calcutta. Then there are other questions. One of these is raised by a German magazine that a few years after the nun's death published a dossier in which it asked an uncomfortable question. Where did the money go? Because yes, the order founded by Mother Teresa was based on poverty and humility, but all around the world, so many people had donated money to that order to help the poor of Calcutta and beyond. But that money disappeared. How come the order's facilities are so run down, so frightening in their extreme poverty? When a rain of millions of dollars came to India, from all over the world, where did that money go? No one can give an answer to this question, and that is perhaps an even heavier stain. Because on one hand, we can understand, even if we don't accept Mother Teresa of Calcutta's view of exalting suffering and pain to the maximum. But on the other hand, money that disappears in any field, whether financial, social, economic, military, or religious, is never a good sign, especially when no answers are given afterwards. The only response that comes from the hagiographers of Mother Teresa is to reject the accusations and invite even the critics to provide evidence for what they say. The critics respond, arguing that essentially the evidence, the only proof, is that the money is gone, and they would appreciate an answer themselves. It's important to know where they ended up. If they arrived, we must learn how they were used. If not, We need to know why. Many people who publicly supported the fundraising efforts may not have actually handed over those funds. To understand what happened, another question involves the money. As the English say, follow the money. Just follow the money. You meet some characters, let's say curious, to be polite. One of them is named Chancellor Kidding, and he's known in the news because he was convicted of fraud. He had set up complicated financial schemes to defraud subscribers, and part of the proceeds from his fraud ended up with the religious congregation of the Missionary of Charity, the order founded by Mother Teresa of Calcutta. There's another character we've met in a previous video, Jean-Claude Duvalier, known to the world as Baby Doc. You already know who we're talking about, the son of Papa Doc, the brutal and bloody dynasty of Haiti. Jean-Claude Duvalier donates large sums to Mother Teresa of Calcutta's cause. Who he does it for is still a mystery. It's strange that a dictator who has a reputation among his own people would actually decide to donate millions and millions of dollars to charity. Mother Teresa of Calcutta still does it. During her life, she never answered the few, one must say they were few, questions about her political friendships. Of course, to raise funds, sometimes you have to make deals, even with the devil. And if the devil is Duvalier, he's a devil that's definitely recognizable. But it's clear. The end justifies the means, as Machiavelli wrote. And so maybe we could also say that if the goal is to help those most in need, sometimes you can also bend the rules a little to the contingencies of history, pretending not to know the personal background of certain dictators. But what happened to that money? And why did Mother Teresa never refuse help that came from certain individuals? We would call them ambiguous, or at least questionable. These are also answers that we are unable to obtain. After all, Mother Teresa has been dead for quite some time now. It's been 26 years, and her order, when faced with certain questions, remains silent. There is one last stain on Mother Teresa's record. It's a stain that we could call mystical, or at least strictly religious. In 2007, 10 years after her death, another book was published titled Yes, My Light. It's not an investigation, just a collection. A collection of 60 letters by Mother Teresa. In these letters, addressed to her confessors, Mother Teresa expressed strong doubts about her personal faith. And these doubts are very, very heavy. In one, she writes, "A terrible darkness is in me as if everything were dead. And it's been more or less like this since I started this job of mine." In another letter, she writes, "I whisper the prayers of the community. I try to draw from every little word the sweetness it is supposed to give. The prayer of union is gone. I don't pray now." She defines Christ in these letters as the absent one with a capital A, the one who is always silent. This book is shocking. Why was a person who was canonized so recently for meritorious deeds in life, but who, regarding his own faith, expressed himself in such harsh and critical terms, is something that shakes the foundations of any religious belief, let alone the Catholic one? Yet all this has not shaken the rock-solid certainty of many believers, who still today see Mother Teresa of Calcutta as an immaculate saint. Others instead still wonder today who Mother Teresa of Calcutta really was. Some Canadian scholars have developed a theory according to which the impact of the media world, us journalists, cameramen, but also simply the trips made abroad by the saint, has contributed to the creation of a myth, an untouchable, intangible myth, the myth of Mother Teresa, a myth that goes beyond reality, that overshadows it and covers all the various shadows, all the dark points of her personal story and of her order. It covers her doubts about faith, her hesitations. It covers her excessive exaltation of pain. It covers the issue of the missing money and her uncomfortable political friendships. In the face of all these objections, the Catholic Church has never shown any signs of giving in. Of course, it couldn't do that. It would mean reconsidering the dogma of sainthood. But allow us an observation. Human beings by nature are fallible. And to define a human being as a saint that is close to divinity, that's what the ancient Greeks called hubris, religious arrogance. the desire to compare oneself, that is, human beings, to divinity itself. According to ancient Greek morality, those who were guilty of hubris were condemned to face a harsh punishment, almost as poetic justice, because you cannot approach the divine while remaining imperfect. Mother Teresa of Calcutta was a woman who had courage in what she did, in what she said, in what she wrote, even in her contradictions. And for this, she deserves respect. But if you sense an objection, you don't answer questions with silence or with disdain. Certain questions deserve an answer. Also, because the more time passes, the more these questions pile up, the fewer answers we get, the more silence there is, and the more doubts grow. Doubts about who Mother Teresa of Calcutta really was, and what the true intentions were, hers, those who worked with her, and those who supported her.